We're live! How exciting! So welcome everyone to the first episode of the Six Figure Success Club podcast. I'm so excited to be here. I have been so hyper all morning waiting to go live. And we've got an amazing guest with us. We've got Kaitlyn Cook with us. So do you want to just introduce yourself, please, Kaitlyn?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kaitlyn. I am Australian, but I live in the UK. So I help people all around the world create impactful and profitable businesses. And it is the funnest thing that I do. And I absolutely love, love, love business.
I love that. How long have you been in business?
I've been in business. This is my 5th year, and I've been helping people build businesses for 11 years.
Amazing. And what was the thing that got you into doing it in the first place? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, no, not at all. So I'm Australian and my partner's English, and I met him when I was living in the UK the first time. And we'd been together 10 months, and we either had to pay $7,500 for me to get a visa to stay in the UK or for him to get a visa for Australia. Or we were like, why don't we take option C and then we'll just travel Southeast Asia for a year and see if our relationship is worth, $7,500 for a visa. So we did. That's what we did. We sold everything, and we traveled and landed in Bangkok in Thailand in 2019. And at the morning we woke up, we were looking over the river. I was having a coffee, and I opened my laptop. I'm like, what the hell can I do to make money online?
Wow.
And it just went from there.
First of all, I love option C. I love that you were presented with 2 options and you were like, I'm not doing either of those. Let's think of something else instead. And I think traveling Asia is a much better way to spend £7,500 or dollars, for sure. And good to hear that it worked out and your relationship was worth it, and now you're happily married.
Yes. We got engaged actually a couple of months ago. So yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing. But yeah, going from taking the plunge to go traveling, I think it's always pretty scary. It sounds fun, and I imagine it was fun when you get there, but taking the actual plunge of kind of leaving what you know behind and just traveling for months, I imagine is quite scary, especially with somebody that you're considering maybe spending your life with, possibly.
Yeah, I think I'm very much a person, I just jump into things. I don't try and overanalyze it. I just jump in and go, let's just figure it out. And I'm so glad I did that instead of overanalyzing all the different ways that it could or couldn't have worked. But it was the best thing we could have done, because we literally just jumped in and we're like 24/7 together. If it doesn't work like this, then we have our answer. And it was the best thing we ever did.
Amazing. I love that. So then you were looking at how can you make money online. So what I'm imagining is that you found lots of ways and you tried some ways, and some of those ways probably didn't work. So what were the first kind of things that you tried?
So from a practical standpoint, what I did to kind of figure it out, because for anybody who's listening and they're like, I want to start a business, I have no idea what to do. I wrote down what I could actually get paid to do. So what I was skilled in already, and from a confidence standpoint, that helps. So I was like, right, well, I know business, I'm good with business acumen. I'm good with financial acumen. What can I do to kind of figure this out? And I just love helping people and helping people achieve goals. So the first business I set up, it was called Keep It Simple Startups.
Wow.
Yeah, it was called Keep It Simple Startups. And for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to blog and I'm going to be all over Instagram, and I'm going to do it this way. And a month into it, I realized I don't like posting a lot on social media. I'm very, very inactive on social media. I'm not consistent with writing blogs. It's just not something I enjoy doing. And at that time, I was like, no. So that failed miserably, because I was like, well, I'm not going to keep up with this. So that stopped. And then it kind of evolved. So the first way I started making money was just literally creating business plans for people, because that's what I'd literally done before. It wasn't something I loved to do, but it was something I could do. So I started doing that. And then it's evolved now into being able to do things that I love to do in my zone of genius, that I enjoy doing. So much more. But there's so many ups and downs throughout the business journey. It is not linear, that is for sure.
No. Absolutely. And I love talking about the downs because I think we see a lot of the ups on social media. I think we see a lot of the highlights and the this is how I can help you. And we see a lot less of the this is actually the real stuff. And this is when it gets really tricky. And sometimes you want to jack it in and just go back to work kind of times. So when you were kind of starting out and you realized that the Instagramming and the blogging wasn't the thing that you wanted to do, what was it like kind of making the decision to stop doing that thing and move on to doing a different thing?
Good question. I think, honestly, it was scary. It was scary, and I had the duality in my mind of I don't want to quit. I just want to keep going. But I was also like, but I don't know if I want to keep doing this. So it was real like, am I actually quitting because I just want to quit, or am I quitting because I actually don't want to do it? So I know because there's this whole mentality when you start business, like just don't quit, just don't quit. But it's like, don't quit the thing you want to do, but quit the things that you've tried and you don't like. So it took me longer than it should have to actually have just gone, no. And I've held this guilt around it for so long. And then, years passed and you get over it. But I think it's a very much a transition. It's a moment by moment choice. And I think one of the most incredible things that I've done, and it's a very grounding practice that helps when you're starting or growing a business, is get clear on what you actually want your days to be like. What do you want to feel? What do you want this entirety of the business to be like? And then ask yourself, is what I'm doing now giving me that? Or could it give me that? And if it can't, that's a really good indication to go, maybe I should pivot slightly if you don't like the word quit. Maybe I should shift it to something different. For me, it wasn't like quit one thing, go to another. It was more like I just kind of shifted. I took myself out of the box of just working with startups and I expanded on what that could be, which worked for me.
I love that. I think that's something people forget is that you can get to the same end destination, which for you is to build a business that's helping businesses. But the journey to get there are so many different ways that you can do that exact same thing. And just because you've tried plan A and it's not working doesn't mean that by moving on to plan B, you're giving up and failing and all those other things that come alongside those feelings that we get alongside that. It's just another way of getting you to the same destination.
Oh, most definitely. And I think I was so fixated on the start because I think I had this huge imposter syndrome because I had spent 6 years before I'd started my own business, helping businesses grow. And I was like, but I've tried a strategy and it hasn't worked. Like, who am I to do this? This isn't okay. And then 5 years in, I'm now realizing there's not just one way. There were multiple different businesses, different ways to enter the market, different ways to grow. And it depends the chapter and the season of your life as the business owner as well will then define what strategy you take and how you move and grow in the business. So it's not, you'll never just be able to go, this is exactly where I'm going, this is the perfect strategy and nail it every time. That doesn't happen. In the world of business, it's, I'm going to try this one way and see how that goes. And I'll get feedback. What did I enjoy? What didn't I enjoy? What worked? What didn't work? And then you apply all of that feedback to the next strategy. So it's not that you're failing or you're doing it wrong. That's literally the process. You try a strategy, you get the feedback, and you try another strategy, and you continuously grow.
I love that. I think that's a really important way of looking at it, is that that is the nature of a business. It's not, you don't pick kind of a cookie cutter approach and you just go ahead and that's the way it is for the rest of the business life. You are constantly adapting things based on, like you said, based on where you are in life, but also based on where your clients are, because the likelihood is that the clients that you're serving are going to change, or the clients that you want to serve are going to be different as you move through different areas of your life.
Oh, most definitely. And I think I did a LinkedIn post about this the other day where it was like, you get to an oh moment in your business where you're like, oh, and you realize you have to grow. You realize you have to do something different. You realize the clients that you've been serving, you've actually outgrown them, which means you now need to level up. You need to get in that uncomfortable state of business where you don't know the exact way that it all works. And then you have to apply that strategy. And it's when we find ourselves in the comfort of the business where we go, this strategy works, and I know I can get this, and da da da, but you stop innovating, you stop growing. That's where the stagnation of your growth will inevitably kind of come to a pause, because you're no longer innovating or growing, and you have to in business. And for me, there's such a connection between the amount you will only grow, your business will only grow as much as you're willing to grow. Meaning, how much are you willing to be uncomfortable? How much are you willing to make a mistake, own up to it, and apply something new? How much are you willing to, try a new skill? And that for me was so hard at the start. Again, like this imposter syndrome of I've helped people before, so I should just be able to know this. And it's like, oh God, no, I'm a human being, and I'm at a different stage in my life now, and I'm looking at it differently. Like, I'm just kind of a learner again. And it was a bit of a mindset shift, to be honest. But once I got there, it was a lot easier once I figured that out.
I'm glad you got there. But yeah, you're right. I think for some of us, we want to learn, but then actually getting into the position where you are learning something and you're not yet great at that thing, you then get that worry and that fear that, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And we forget that the whole point of learning is that you're not supposed to be an expert yet. That is the nature of learning. That's why we learn. And giving yourself kind of that permission to not be amazing at something right now because you're learning to get there, so that you can then help your clients more with those things that you are learning.
Yes, definitely. And I think when I've applied that mentality now, I've really doubled down on that for the last few years, and I've found my zone of genius, or what I'm incredible at in the business, whilst I'm learning everything else. So it's not you've learned everything, you're done. It's you're constantly learning in different things in different ways. But for me, what helps me stay great at what I do is working in my zone of genius that I'm great at, whilst learning other things and innovating other ways. Because at the start, I think because when I did the blogs and I did like the social media, that was complete, like I had no idea about any of it. So I'm trying to do all of it. And I'm like, I know none of this. So I was like, what can I actually just do confidently? And that's where I started figuring it out.
Yeah, and finding that balance between the things that you're really good at and doing those things because you know that's going to support the business right now, and then learning the new things so that you've got somewhere to take the business when the things that you already know start to get kind of stagnant.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, as you said, when you started the business, you were doing too many new things that you weren't an expert in, and that's definitely not the way that we want to do things. I always teach my clients that if you want to learn something new, or you want to build a new habit, it needs to be kind of one at a time almost, and get good at that next thing or build that next habit and get comfortable with that before you then start adding in other things, because otherwise you kind of overwhelm yourself and you've got nothing to ground you. Like you said, you're not working in your zone of genius, you're only doing all of these new things and you get kind of unstuck.
Oh my gosh, most definitely. And I've realized the deeper I've gone into the business, I've realized how everything is somewhat interconnected. Like when you learn a new habit, if you're trying to do 10 new things, your nervous system will be so activated because you're doing something so new beyond its comfort level that you will self-sabotage, and then you'll spring all the way back and you'll be worse off than before you started. So but some people are great at learning like potentially two things at once. There's some people who are like, I can't just do one, it's too boring. Two is like great for them. But it's all about figuring out what works for you. And that's where those strategies come into play. That's where the mistakes are made. Because then you go, am I good with with two new habits? And if you're not, because you failed at it, you'll go, great, let's try one then and see what happens. And there's a real compassion and kindness that comes with that, because it's literally just knowledge for you to get better at what you want to do. Because there's nobody on this earth that goes, I want to be a business owner, and then the next day they're successful and they haven't fallen and they haven't made mistakes. It's not possible.
Absolutely not. I always love the little tidbit of the overnight success took me 10 years. That's one of my favorite kind of things when we look at a business. They have not become an overnight success. You haven't seen the 10 years worth of bit of struggle and fails and challenges that they've been through, you've literally seen what looks like overnight success. And I always think everyone should remember that when they're thinking that they're failing. It's absolutely not the case.
Oh, most definitely. And it's a really grounding reminder as well. Like, everyone's journey is different. Everyone's time frame is different. Like, when you're growing a business, you're also living. You're also potentially a parent. Like, you've got like so many other things going on that sometimes that requires a rebalance, a reshuffle, a refocus, where your business isn't the primary focus. Like, other factors might be, which inevitably is going to change, the outcome of what you want. But it's all okay, because you'll get to where you want to go eventually. It's just not necessarily in your time.
Absolutely. And I think being empathetic towards yourself and understanding that you're a completely different person to somebody else and the journey that they're on. And that, I think people see that as a negative, but I see that as a positive. I think it's a good thing that you're not the same as that other person, and the journey that you're on is completely different, because it means that you're showing up and serving your clients in a way that is unique to you, and that's what's going to draw them in. If you try and copied somebody else and did exactly what someone else was doing, you're not going to be successful, because you're going to end up drawing in their ideal clients, and then when you're working with them, there's going to be a disconnect, and you're not going to gel, and it's not going to end up being successful.
Oh, most definitely. I think there's this, I say, because I know there's like competitors and all of that out there, but I tend to call them your companions, because they're people out there who have done what it is that you're wanting to do in their own way that's worked for them. Meaning, it's a way for you to be like, to believe and know that it's possible for you to figure it out in your own unique way. And the more that you figure it out, and like the more, and I know I keep saying this, but it's so important, the more you make mistakes, the more you fall down, that gives yourself the ability to stand back up, to know that you've got your own back, that you can do it. And when you keep standing back up after you make a mistake or after you fail, there's this inner self-belief, there's this inner confidence that kind of just like erupts, and it's incredible. And from that, you stand up a bit more taller, like, I know who I am, I know who I'm serving, I know I've got this. And it's in those moments by moments that you decide, this is who I am, this is who I'm serving, and this is how I'm going to show up today. And it's so cool, especially for women, to see the women change in those moments and just become, and just be like, this is who I am. You're like, yes, it is. Well done.
It's so empowering, isn't it, for them themselves, and to see it in other people as well. And I think you're right. I think the falling down and then the getting back up, if we didn't have that, if everything was kind of smooth sailing, we wouldn't learn to trust ourselves and the decisions that we make, because everything's just going kind of great all the time and nothing's ever going to go wrong. But it's in the ability to pick yourself back up when there's been a challenge. That's when you really start to trust yourself and know who you are and what it is that you want to do and how you want to kind of show up in the world.
Oh, definitely. And it was so funny, because I knew that on an intellectual level, because I knew that we're like speaking to business owners before I started mine. I was always like, I couldn't understand why some businesses failed and others succeeded. And I was just like, you literally have a clear strategy. Where you need to go. Just walk there. Just do that. It's easy. You'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I started my own business and I really reflected, and I was like, holy moly, there's so much more that goes on in the inside, not just the external strategy. And it's not just linear. Like, there's so many levels involved in, and this is why it's so individual to the person, to the business owner. It's like, where are you now? Where's your self-confidence now? Where's your mindset? Where's your self-belief? And dependent upon that will dictate how many times you have to get back up to start trusting yourself, to start going, you know what? I've made the same error and the same mistake multiple times, but I'm learning and I can do this and I've got this. And that is the work. And I was having an interview with somebody the other day, and I was saying, like, when you're in the starting phase of business, it's normally around 18 months is like the sweet spot of a startup. But there's not as much external validation, as in the money's not necessarily where you want it to be. The team's not where you want it to be. So it's like, nothing's really working. I'm not doing this. But the 18 months is actually spent a lot more on the internal shifts that you need to make the internal growth you need in order to grow your business. So what I would say with that, and it's so important with a startup, is celebrate your progress. Understand where you were at the start and where you are now, and celebrate those tiny little milestones of where you stood back up and you were able to believe in yourself. And that will help you go further than if you just try and looking at the external validation, not as quick at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And the celebrating those times every time means that every time that it happens, it will become a lot easier to deal with, because you've kind of done it before. You kind of know what to expect. You've celebrated it before, so this time round you'll get to celebrate it again, and that makes it a little less scary when you're kind of going through it at the time.
Almost definitely. It's incredible. Because how long have you been in business for?
3 years now.
Oh, I like the 3-year mark.
I was still working full-time in corporate. So balancing, running the business and doing my full-time corporate job has definitely been challenging, but I've loved it.
Yeah. Have you quit the corporate, or are you still doing the corporate?
I got made redundant last week. So yes, I've quit the corporate.
Congratulations. That's the best thing that will ever happen.
Yeah. So
Really?
that's definitely the way I'm looking at it. I hadn't yet left corporate because there were still corporate goals that I wanted to hit. But I feel like this has happened at the ideal time, and it's given me, although for some people it's been really scary, and I feel for them, I'm looking at it with kind of gratitude, and it's given me the opportunity to take the plunge and do the coaching full time, which is terrifying and also very exciting at the same time.
Oh, congratulations. I love that. There is always, along the journey, it is so beautiful, because like I was saying before, with the growth, you always have to grow. You're constantly having to grow and to move. And when you get too comfortable, then we kind of get moved on. And so I find the duality when I'm working with clients, and for myself as well, where it's like, okay, I want to do this and I want to do that. And you're like, okay, cool. Well, what would happen if you did this? And then all of a sudden, something out of the blue changes, like they lose their job or whatever, or their partner gets redundant, then they have to double down. And you're like, this is literally the best opportunity, because now you're leveling up to double down. An incredible book I would recommend is read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. He talks about problems and like how we can really level up in our life and business, and the normal process that occurs, like the fear that pops up, the self-sabotage. It's a really good read if you're into
I absolutely get that. Yes, I definitely need that right now. But yeah, I'm definitely seeing it as a blessing, and it was completely unexpected, but I mean, worse things have happened. It's not the end of the world. I've got the coaching business. It's fine. I'm just going to take this full time, and it's going to be great. And I'm really excited.
You've got this. Embrace it. Get clear on what your goals are in the coaching business, and just double down on what your KPIs are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, so we've obviously talked a lot about starting out in the business and celebrating the mini wins. So one thing that I've been talking to some clients about this week is their KPIs and the sort of things that they should be measuring at the start, because you don't necessarily have the income coming in or the number of clients that you want, but that doesn't mean that you're not making progress. So I'd love to get your take on, if for a client that's at the beginning of their journey, what sort of things would you suggest that they measure to show that they are making progress, even if they're not yet seeing the income that they want?
Yeah, good question. So what you focus on expands. So the way I always look at it, and this is where the individuality of a business can come in. Like, there's obviously the fundamentals of what you need to look at, but then there's also like elements of what you want to bring in. So when you're growing your business, you want to be really clear on what your output is in terms of what your lead generation is. How many people are you reaching out to? What's your lead strategy look like? So then you can say, for example, I sent out 10 cold DMs. Of those 10 cold DMs in a day, I got 3 responses. Of those 3 responses, I got 2 no's and 1 yes. Meaning, if I expand this out, and I want to get 3 yeses in a day, I need to contact at least 10 people. At least 30 people. So what that does, it gives you really clear metrics. And I always break things down to a day-to-day basis, especially when you're growing. You want to get in the habit of doing something every day that's going to make your tomorrow better. So if today you're like, I need revenue, I want to bring in cash, I need cash quick, it's like fantastic. What's your lead generation? What's your marketing look like? And just double down on those efforts and focus in on that, as well as obviously track your revenue and your profit. Track both the revenue and the profit. I've seen so many times that people have great revenue, but they're actually making a loss in their profit because their expenses are way too high. So track both of those, because as your revenue grows, you'll be able to track it more and more.
I think that's a good point. I think quite often when you're in the beginning stages of the business, there's a tendency to ignore the expenses and not keep a clear eye on what you're spending and how much you're spending and when you're spending it, and we're focused more on kind of the revenue that comes in. But then you're right, then there then becomes a disconnect between of the actual profit that you're making, and you might be making loads of revenue but your expenses are too high and therefore the business actually isn't profitable.
Oh, definitely. And I think, because I've done this exercise so many times for myself, first and foremost, because we're constantly evolving and growing, and there's lots of different things we have to manage and juggle. And sometimes we let that slip, and that's okay. The beautiful thing with business is it's ever changing. You can pivot, you can shift, you can double down on something to change the results. So don't panic. If you notice that you're making a loss, don't panic. Just simplify it and shift it. And so many times I do this activity with clients. We'll do like what your month. So it's like, what are you doing every month? What does this look like? What is your day to day? And what's really important is like, where are you spending your time? Because if you're spending majority of your time in the admin, you're literally going to be growing the admin side of the business. But if you're in the phases where you need revenue to come in quicker, you need to be spending more time in the revenue generating activities. And that's normally where you don't want to be, because it's scary or uncomfortable and you're saying all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. But they're the areas you need to be doing. And it's it's a big moment. It's a big shift when you realize you actually don't need to work 9 to 5 to make a good living. You just need to do the things every day or every week that's going to grow the revenue. When my son was first born, I was working. He'd nap for 2 hours in the middle of the day, and I would work for 2 hours in the middle of the day when he napped. And I scaled the business to 6 years in 7 months because I'd spent 2 hours doing like the revenue generating activity that scared me at the start. But towards the end, I was like, oh, this is fine. This is absolutely fine. But it was very intentional, very focused hours. So you don't have to work a 9 to 5 or 10 hours a day. Work what you want.
Just because you spent those 2 hours doing the focused work that's going to make the difference in your business. So I quite often say to my clients, so I'm really big on learning to prioritize and doing the most important tasks first. So I always get my clients to set their weekly big 3. So what are the 3 big tasks that you need to do this week that will get you closer to your business goals? And then if they're sort of umming and ahhing and they don't really know, the question I always ask them is, if you've only got 4 hours next week, what do you have to get done to make progress in the business? And getting that, whatever those activities are, whether that's DMing people or following up with leads or getting your social media content out, get that done first. And then if you've got energy or time left over to do other things, amazing. But you know that you've done the things that are actually going to bring in the revenue.
Definitely. Because there's only we all have a certain amount of energy every single day. And it's really important where you choose to spend that energy and how you feel when you're doing that activity. So if you're fueling and spending your time in 90% of things that you don't enjoy doing, you're literally depleting your energy because you're tired. You don't want to do it. You're talking yourself out of it. Your brain's going to be switching between this. So you're literally using cognitive energy to tell yourself why you should or shouldn't do something. And so it's in those moments, and normally when you write down what you're actually doing in a day and get clear on it, you can get rid of 80% of the stuff you're doing. Because a lot of the times when you're growing a business, or a lot of the times just generally in business, no matter where you are, we get in what am I meant to be doing again? And we feel guilty if we're not working. So you just find stuff to do. And it's like, hold on a minute. I don't need to do all of this stuff. It doesn't have to be this complicated. So it's like literally how much money do you want to make this month? Where are your clients? Have a chat with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as people, we're generally really good at filling our time. Like, we're not, it takes a long time to learn that you don't have to spend all of your time doing stuff, whatever it is, whether it's working in your business or watching TV or scrolling on Instagram. You don't, like, you are allowed to do nothing. And I think, especially as a business owner, learning that is really challenging. And the fact that you don't have to be, you didn't leave a 9 to 5 to work 24/7, or most people didn't. If you want to do that, that's completely up to you. But I think most business owners have left the 9 to 5 because they actually want to work less hours, but they end up working more hours. And I think taking that time to evaluate how you're spending your time, I think, is really important.
Oh my gosh, it really, it so is. And I noticed it with me and I noticed it with my clients. When you start to earn more money by doing less, there's a real guilt that comes in with it. Like, who am I to earn this amount of money doing something I love? And so because of that, for me, I overcomplicated my business drastically. And then I would hire all these people because I just felt bad about having all this extra money. And the same goes with like my clients. That's kind of their pattern as well. So it's really recognizing and understanding, it's being aware of what action you're about to take and why are you taking that action. So what's
Mhm.
the actual reason you're doing that? Do you have to do that? Like, what happens if it doesn't get done? And it's a lot of, because 80% of business is mindset. It honestly
Mhm.
is. It's
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I don't think most people know that. I think it's kind of the hidden secret of owning a business, is that it's a lot of it is to do with your mindset and how you show up and how you're talking to yourself and how guilty you make yourself feel. I think that's the thing that more business owners should be focused on.
Yeah, and I remember hearing that, like, when I first started, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "What's this mindset thing?" And it was so interesting because I wasn't aware then of what mindset was enough to understand that it's important. So I was just like, "What's this? What are you talking about, mindset?" But it wasn't until I made a lot of mistakes and really just was like, "I'm working so much harder, but nothing, like, the
Mhm.
results aren't happening. What's going on?" That I started researching ways to make it easier, and everyone's talking about mindset, and I'm like, and then I started, because I was open to it, researching and understanding more about mindset. And like, the way that I define mindset is it's in the moments by moments of how you choose to speak to yourself. Because for me personally, I was so hard on myself. Every time I failed, every time I fell down, I'd just be like, stay down, like, you can't do this. And like, when you're trying to grow something, when you're trying to innovate, you need to have a good environment. And if you're
Mm.
constantly being mean to yourself, it is so hard to grow a business and to start a business. Um, yeah, mindset's very important.
It absolutely is. If I look at like my corporate career, it wasn't until I started working on my mindset seriously that I made like a huge success. So I hit 6 figures in my corporate career before I turned 30. And I'd only
Mm,
been in my corporate career for 6 years when I did that.
right.
But I don't think I started kind of looking at mindset and working on that about 2, 3 years in. And then within 3 years, I'd gone from like 30K to 100. And
Yeah.
it's because I spent so long working on my mindset, and now I do it every day. And I like to look at it as it's a muscle that you grow. You'd go to the gym every day to work on your six pack. You need to be working on your brain every day and your mindset and making sure that it is rock solid,
Yeah.
because it's the thing you have the most control over, but it's the
Mhm.
thing that will fail you the most if you ignore it.
Yes. Because if we think about it, on average, we have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And if you think about that, and if you're not aware of those thoughts, 95 to 97% of those are the same that you're going to have tomorrow. And the same, so you're literally giving yourself 3 to 5% space to think or something new. And when you think something new, you create and you do something new. So your outcome's new. So there's this real, when you're first like starting to understand mindset, there's this real opening of, what the hell have I been thinking for all these years? When you actually allow yourself to be aware of it, and you're like, what? And there's this kind of like going through the weeds, trying to figure it all out. It's still a bit foggy. It's still a bit just like, I'm unsure what's happening, but you're aware of it. And that's what's important. And then the second phase of that is being aware of it and then choosing something new and then kind of stopping it and going, I want to do this. I want to do this. And what happens is when you do it and you have to do it day to day, because that creates a compounding effect. You can just do it a couple of times a day. Like, it doesn't have to be all day, every day. But it's a beautiful thing when you're aware of it and then you shift it, and it's a day-to-day mentality, that compounding effect. And before you know it, something that used to bother you and keep you down for days, you're just like, oh, that barely annoyed me. That's barely anything now. And then you realize how much more at peace you are with yourself. And you've also got this space to think of something new to do in your business, to innovate. And you've got the creativity because you're not filled with the stress, because you're thinking yourself into stress.
Yeah, absolutely. You've gone from that 3 to 5% space that you've given yourself to more like 60%.
Definitely. It's so cool. And even like, and you get through, and this is where the book, like The Big Leap, is really, it's a great addition to this discussion, because it's once you unlock that 3 to 5%, and then you figure one thing out and you unlock it, there's always another thing. Then there's always another thing. And there's just more and more and more. And it's a really phenomenal journey. I never knew entrepreneurship was like. This is kind of the journey that I've taken with it, is a lot more of the energetics, the mindset, the strategy and analysis side. And it's so fun. It's just so fun to try and find your own way around it, what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth noting that to begin with, it doesn't feel fun, because again, it's something new that you're doing and thinking about and being aware of. That the more you do it, the easier it gets, the easier it becomes to get over those kind of thoughts, and it becomes almost a habit because it's something that you're working on every day, and it almost feels weird then to not think about how you're thinking about things.
Yeah, it's a beautiful transition between who you were at the start and the person that you're constantly becoming throughout the journey, because they're constantly evolving and changing. And when you're in business and you're very aware that mindset is a huge component of it, you fundamentally have to change your thinking in order to change the results in your business, which means you're going to become someone new, but you get to choose who that is. And that's a really fun thing to do. At the start, it's quite confronting, but once you figure out the pattern and you get into the habit of it, like you said, it just becomes, remarkable.
And I'd love to know if you've got particular ways that you teach your clients of how to work on your mindset. Are there things that you get them to do every day, or how do you kind of address that with your clients?
So it depends the client. So at the moment, I'm working a lot with CEOs at 7 figures trying to get to 8 figures, and they're burnt out. They can't even do mindset work because they are beyond burnt out. Because there's this, it's quite, and again, that's why the journey is so important. So there's the belief fundamentally with the clients I'm working with at the moment that, like, I'll be happy when. So their mindset, you've always got a barrier between where you are now and what you want to feel. So there's a big build-up for them in regards to the burnout they're feeling, in regards to the frustration, the stress. So they're at a new stress level. So big thing that I'm actually getting them to do is take a step back. And they're like, what? I have to hold on. Nope, take a step back. I've got this. You're fine. Take a step back. And it's because they need a step back in order to breathe, in order to actually make space mentally, in order to make space emotionally, and to feel everything they're feeling. So a lot of the times, if you're like, I'm frustrated, but I can't feel it because I just have to get on with it, and I just have to do it, you're suppressing everything that just needs to be felt and moved through. So that's a huge component of what I'm working on with clients at the moment. I'm just like, take some space, take a week, and just feel what you need to feel. And they're like, I don't feel better. I'm like, you're not going to right now because you've spent 8 years doing this. It's a new thing you're going to learn. And so then once they've had space and they're in more of a calmer position, it's like, right, now let's take a moment. So a huge thing that I love to do is meditate, like just literally sit there for 5 to 10 minutes and just not focus on anything, just try and focus on my breath kind of thing. And that brings incredible awareness to your thoughts and the patterns of thoughts, because our thoughts are in a pattern of emotions. So it's like the thought of guilt, the thought of jealousy, the thought of frustration. It's this loop you can become aware of in the meditative space. So I'll ask them to do that. And a lot of them are like, I'm not doing that. And you're like, cool, go for a walk in nature and listen to a podcast, or go for a walk, listen to music. And it's the act of actually doing something outside the business gives them the space to think more creatively and innovative. But it's definitely evolved over time.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a few things there that you said that I wanted to pick up on. So I love meditating. It's one of my favorite ways of relaxing. I think there's so much that we can consume now, and everything's always so busy, that taking the time out to meditate, even if it's only for 5 minutes, I think is really rewarding. And I also think that the benefits that you get from it is worthwhile doing. And I forget who said it, but obviously you said that the clients that you're working with feel really weird taking the time out. And there's a quote that's like, you should meditate for 10 minutes every day. And if you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes every day, you should meditate for an hour every day, which I absolutely love. And I think it's so true.
Oh my God. So it is, because what I've found, and the connector between it, is the clients are at the 7-figure, and this isn't for everybody. I don't want people to going, oh my God, when I'm at 7 figures, I'm going to be burnt out. This is literally just one type of person, like a few type of people's reality, but it can be very different for everybody else. But what tends to happen is there's like this fundamental belief of, if I work harder, I will get more out of it. I will get a lot better, I'll get more money, this will happen. But what occurs is, when you get into that pattern and that habit, it compounds. And if you're trying to work harder and harder and harder and suppressing your happiness, suppressing your family life, suppressing your enjoyment, that adds up and creates burnout. And this happens year after year after year. So the clients, as I said, that I'm working with now, they're at that phase where they have to take a step back because they haven't for so many years. And so when I look at that from where they are now, I then apply that and speak to people in the earlier phases of business. And like you were saying, prioritize your time. Get really clear on, not every day you can put 100% into your business. Not every day it's going to be balanced and the same. It's always going to ebb and flow. But get clear on what you can do for you in a self-care way. And for me, it's meditation for 5 or 10 minutes a day, a couple of times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also reading, like, what is it to you that brings you enjoyment? And make sure you do that every day. Because the point for me with business hasn't been to just make as much money as humanly possible and then I can be happy. It's like, how do I find happiness amongst growing a business, growing a family, growing in different places in the world? Like, it's all of that. So it's really a balance of, what do you want to be working on today?
Mm-hmm.
And we always fall down on those things, and just remind yourself to get back up and try again tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. The fact that you're working with 7-figure CEOs and they're having these problems, I think is very enlightening for the people that are at the beginning of the journey, to understand that these are just the things that generally all business owners go through. It doesn't matter what stage of business you're at, it happens to everybody. And I think it's really important to put the foundations in place when you're not at 7 figures, when you are at the beginning, instead of feeling like you need to be working flat out right now so that you can earn all the money and then get to 7 figures. Build the business now in the way that you'd want it to be run when you're at 7 figures, so that when you get to 7 figures, you don't then have to do what some of your clients are doing and get burnt out and panic and not be able to take the time out because of the way that you've built the business. I think it's far more important to build it like that now and then grow it.
Oh, most definitely. I cannot agree anymore. And I think a big piece of what I do is I come in and help CEOs at that level create the foundation they never knew they had to. And the foundation piece is strategic, like, what's your actual infrastructure to support your continuous growth, but also what's your own foundation that you need to be working on? Like, what's the piece for you every day that you want to be doing? What do you genuinely care about? And it's the most incredible thing because we all have problems. We all have stresses throughout the journey. You don't get to 6 figures, you don't get to 7 figures, you don't get to 8 figures and go, I have no issues. I'm absolutely fine. It doesn't happen. You will always have an issue. But so for me, I was like, well, if that's the case, how do I want to feel every day? I want to feel happy and I want to feel pretty like free and just at the moment, I want to just have fun as much as I can every day. It's like, cool. So if I was to scale out what I do every day, and this is what I help clients with, if I was to scale out how I feel every day and what I do every day, how would I feel? I'm like, I would feel even more excited. I would feel even more fun. But a lot of people in business, if you ask them that question, they'll just go, holy crap, I couldn't. I would fall down. I would stress. I couldn't do it. And money is an amplifier of where you are. So if you're emotionally at a really bad place, money's just going to amplify that. It's just going to make you feel even worse. So what I find is really helpful is if you want to make heaps of money in business, you can, but work on your inner state as well as making lots of money, because you'll hold on to money more if you're happier. And you'll enjoy the journey a lot more as well, where it doesn't have to be, I have to get this. It's more like, I get to have this and have fun.
And that shift is amazing when you go from I have to do it to I get to do it and I need to do it to I want to do it. It's an amazing thing to watch your clients go through and for us to go through personally as well.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a beautiful thing. And there's definitely something that occurs when it's kind of like at the moment, I'm giving CEOs permission to just take their hands off, just to be like, don't analyze. There's analysis paralysis here. Just let go, go on a holiday. I got this. You're fine. And when they do that, it's this entire internal shift. They're like, I never knew. I thought if I let go, it was going to all crumble. And you're like, no, because you've built a good business. It's not going to crumble. But you're feeling like you're going to crumble because you haven't addressed how you're emotionally feeling, because you've suppressed that until you got to this point. It's cool. I love what I do.
It sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been amazing. I have loved talking to you.
I have too as well. And congratulations on your first podcast.
It's been so fun. I'm so excited to do more of them. But yeah, it's an amazing journey. It's an amazing thing that you're doing with your clients. It sounds very rewarding and sounds like you're making a huge impact on some very successful people, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying impact. My whole thing is about combining impact and profit, because you can have money and have a great life and create incredible impact. And I'm all about doing both.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.